In this demo, I want to show you how you can use the Pathfinder to start to manipulate some of your objects. There's some different ways that you can make overlapping shapes start to take different behaviors, right? And these are just some circles from a former, exercise. But one of the things that you need to be aware of is that this could work with any of your work, right? Whether you're using other kinds of shapes or icons, right? So you can employ this for this or for other future things that you might be doing in your process. So let's say that we've got this as a composition for right now, but let's say that you'll notice that, for instance, this large one has a white stroke on it. So if we were to sort of make some adjustments, and let's say that we wanted to increase that so that, let's find the stroke here. Let's go up here and we'll look and find stroke. And let's take a look at some options. So we'll show options, and while this object is selected, what we'll do is we'll increase the stroke significantly. So, and then the other thing too is that you'll notice that that stroke is going on the inside. So I could, let's just type something like 30, something really large, and that's going on the inside. But if we wanted that to go on the outside, then what we would need to do is go over here where it says line stroke, and we need to put it on the outside. And so then it becomes something very different. And if we were to start to move it and have it overlap, so right now it's not overlapping. If I take this and I say object, arrange, and I bring it to the front, then you see that it's overlapping and it will start to cut into this shape, and it really produces a different kind of effect, right? And so anyway, you get the idea. And let's just take these two objects, and for right now, let's also, I'm just going to move these out of the way. Let's say that we're going to make some significant changes so that we can see, what's going to happen if we had something that, maybe that can come out a little bit more, so that we can see something that might have an effect of like a radial effect, where we can see it kind of getting smaller as we go around the circle. Maybe we want to do something like this so that it's a little bit more obvious. And then you could, I don't know that this is the composition that I would want, but let's say that this is something that we wanted to start working with. What you can do is you can select these objects, and then I want to show my Pathfinder. So I'm going to go up here to Pathfinder, and you can start to make some adjustments. So if I were to click on the shape under shape modes, if I go here, you see what it does is it's going to create that as a single path that's all combined. I'm going to hit the undo key. If I hover over these, by the way, it'll tell you what it's going to do. Like this will say minus front, and if you hover over this one, it'll intersect. And basically what they're doing is creating compound shapes. This will exclude. But the thing is, once you do something with the Pathfinder and you save it and you close the file and you go back, you cannot undo it. It's not like it's just grouping stuff together. It's actually going to change the existing path. So just be aware of that. So if you have something that you don't want to lose, you need to either make a copy of the file, or you need to make a copy of the objects in the layer, or just make a copy of the entire layer that it's in. All right, so let's try minus front, and you see what that does. I'll undo it with Command Z. And then you can see what intersect is going to do, and it tells me on some of these it'll say that it can't produce results based on the way that the paths are set up. This one, so some of these may not produce interesting results for you. You can do a divide, and that's sort of interesting, right? And then you've got this one that does a trim, and it basically trims all that extra stroke white space around the edge. Merge, and then it basically does something that looks the same. And some of these will look the same on this one, but maybe not on other kinds of things. Crop, that's kind of interesting, right? So that it actually creates this sort of bubble effect. So there's that. Anyway, you can look at all these different options, and you can kind of play around with what would happen. And so, like for instance, this, if you were to go and take this and have it give it a stroke and give the inside a fill, you could have this interesting shape that basically becomes the void, right? And so there are all these different things that you can do with the Pathfinder. Just be aware, as I said, that when you do this and you save it and you close the file, you can't undo it. So make a copy of the stuff if you want to keep the originals. And this is just working based off a stroke, but it doesn't have to be that way. You know, I could have, I could select all of these and I could turn the stroke off completely. And then we could just have these, you know, these things that are kind of like growing from each other. And, you know, I don't know that I actually like that, but let's say that that's what we actually wanted. You could do the same thing. You could combine that. That becomes a single path with a simplified object outline, and so on and so on. That again does no results. This one becomes a little more interesting, right? So these are some basic ways that you can adjust stuff with Pathfinder. And as I said before, you can do this with any, pretty much any shapes. Okay, but you can't do this with typography. So if you wanted to do this with typography, what you will have to do later is you'll have to convert your type to an outline. So if we were to take this, for instance, let's just move this off. I'm going to undo that. So I still have all of my original shapes. I'll just move these off on the pasteboard. All right, now if I come over here and I do something with some type, let's just say that I have the initial L and the initial, let's do another type object out here, and we'll do the initial C. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and take both of these objects. If I come up here and I find character, oops, just do Command T, and it pulls up the character panel like that while I have the type tool selected, or the type, the type object selected. And if I do that, I can come up here and change, you know, what type of type it is. For right now, let's just say it's a Garamond or something like that. And let's make it really large. Let's do, or much larger, I should say. And we can also type this value in. So let's say that it's like 200, and we've got something big. And if we wanted to use Pathfinder on this, let's say that we want that L. Let's click on that. We want the L and the C to kind of start to combine like that. I don't know that I like that ligature. I think that I might like this, right? So let's say, let's just actually undo it. I think I liked it kind of the way that it originally was whenever I first had it there. All right, so I like that. And then if I wanted to get rid of that, I could, or make it more pronounced. But let's say that we like something like this and we want to combine that. Well, I can't use the Pathfinder on this. If I select these and I go to Pathfinder, you'll see that it'll give me this kind of result all the time. You have to actually convert these to outlines. So I'll select these, I'll go up here to type, and then I will say create outlines. All right, and so now I have two separate outlines of that object and that object. And at this point, here, I'm going to duplicate these so that I have the originals. So at this point, what I could do here is I could take this, now that these are no longer editable text, they are actual vector outlines, I can actually come over here and I can combine them. And now it becomes one single path. The other thing I could have done is, you know, that, for instance, and you can start to really play around with the kinds of combinations that you'll end up getting with these using Pathfinder. But you know, these are going to be vector shapes right here. And so then they also become editable with, say, the pen tool, right? So if I wanted to take the direct selection tool, you see all the points that are here now. And I could, if I wanted to come and start subtracting some, like if I wanted to take my deletion point, I could delete that point and see what happens, delete that point and see what happens. And you know, maybe I sort of like some version of this where it starts to have an outline. I could take this, I could move this point if I wanted, you know, to kind of streamline it a little bit. Maybe I need to delete that, I don't know. But anyway, you get the idea, and you could start to really fuss around with this a little bit more. Like this could come down. If I zoom in a little bit more, you know, this can come down, and I could also sort of change the angle, right? So it probably needs to come down even more. Like somewhere it's trying to snap, and that might actually be okay, and it starts to look a little bit like a stroke. Anyway, but you get the idea. I don't know that I like that, but it shows you some ways that you can start to adjust things even with type. And this is after using Pathfinder. Now there's some other things that you can do too using a thing called Live Paint, which is not this, but this is the shape builder. But if you click and hold this, you get to Live Paint under here. So if I were to select these objects, let's go back here. If I selected these objects and I go here to, first I have to group them, so I can do object and then group. Okay, and so now that these things are grouped, what I can do is, and also now I can go into isolation mode and double click and select this object. If I click this, you see all my anchor points, because remember I had already converted these to outlines. They're no longer editable text, right? So anyway, I want to get back out of that, but I'll select this group. And now what I can do is I can go over here to my Live Paint Bucket tool, and I could start to click on different segments or sections. So I want you to stick with black and white though, so you're really going to be a little bit limited. But see how you get these colors? I can arrow through with my arrow keys and see that's going to give me white, that gives me black, red, and so on. So I'm going to choose white, and if I click inside of here, see it basically gives me the same result. And if I click inside of here, you know, it basically makes it go away. But if I go back over here and I arrow back to my black key, I can click and it turns back. All right, and so these are some things that you can do, and it produces essentially kind of the same results, but you have a lot of different kinds of options with one that you don't have with the other, and vice versa. So those are some ways that you can get this subtraction method to happen. So have at it, have fun whenever you're doing stuff with your icons and with your typography, okay, as vector shapes.